Immigration enforcement in America has reached a boiling point, and what happened to Amanda Trebach in Los Angeles this weekend proves just how far federal agents are willing to go. A U.S. citizen, a nurse, and a community activist was violently arrested while simply recording ICE operations. Her only crime? Holding up a camera. This isn't just another immigration story. This is about fundamental rights, government overreach, and communities fighting back against what they're calling fascist tactics.
Held their rally in March at MacArthur Park, demanding people to not support Home Depot because they believe Home Depot is no longer a safe place for immigrants given the recent immigration raids outside the stores. Today's demonstration was to send a message of solidarity, to stand with their immigrant community to help protect them.
It's important because it's making a change, it's letting ICE know that we're not going to be scared. This is our part. You're not going to keep taking our black and brown people, our indigenous people.
And we want the LAPD to protect the people, to protect the folks that they're sworn to protect. And we also want people to be taken out of detention, out of deportation proceedings.
We reached out to ICE and Home Depot about today's raid.
So what exactly happened to Amanda Trebach? And why are community organizers calling this a violation of everything America stands for? To understand what's happening now, we need to look at the broader context of immigration enforcement under the current administration. Since taking office, federal agents have embarked on what critics describe as a militarized campaign across communities nationwide. The scale is unprecedented, with a daily quota of arrests that has transformed neighborhoods into what many residents describe as war zones. In Los Angeles alone, federal agents have conducted what the government calls roving patrols, operations without warrants that sweep through predominantly Latino communities. These aren't targeted operations against violent criminals, despite administration claims. The vast majority of those detained have no criminal records whatsoever. They're day laborers, street vendors, car wash workers, people who happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Home Depot parking lot in Los Angeles, called Operation Trojan Horse, is generating renewed backlash against the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration.
Several agents got out from the back of the truck and started grabbing people.
This worker was able to flee, but 16 others, including his brother, were detained and transported in the back of a moving truck.
This is something that is not acceptable, and we are not going to stand for it in Los Angeles.
A judge in July ordered federal officials to stop indiscriminate.
The footage from recent operations tells a disturbing story. Federal agents concealed themselves in a Penske rental truck at a California Home Depot, jumping out to arrest 16-day laborers in what the Department of Homeland Security called Operation Trojan Horse. The workers from Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, and Nicaragua were simply waiting for work when masked agents surrounded them. This wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern that has sent shockwaves through immigrant communities. The statistics tell the story. Current data shows that while previous administrations focused primarily on arrests in jails and prisons, about 62% of all ICE arrests, the current approach has shifted dramatically. Now, 44% of arrests happen in communities, with an even starker divide between red and blue states. In sanctuary states like Massachusetts, 94% of arrests happen in the community, compared to states that cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. But it's not just the numbers that have changed, it's the tactics. Federal agents now operate in what can only be described as military-style formations. Masked officers in tactical gear conduct surprise raids at workplaces, restaurants, and even outside schools and hospitals. They use flashbangs, smoke devices, and overwhelming force against unarmed individuals. The scenes look more like combat operations than law enforcement. This brings us to Amanda Trebach's story. Early Friday morning, the nurse and community activist was documenting one of these federal operations when agents decided she had seen too much. Despite being a U.S. citizen with every right to record public officials, Trebach was violently arrested and held in federal custody without charges. The message was clear: even observing government actions is now considered a threat. Trebach is part of Unión del Barrio, a community organization that has emerged as one of the most vocal opponents of current enforcement tactics. The group conducts what they call community patrols, volunteers who monitor neighborhoods for signs of federal operations and alert residents through social media and group chats. They're trained to spot the telltale signs. A mare. Icon-made SUVs with tinted windows, usually Dodge Caravans or Ford Explorers, parked in areas where they don't belong. The legal implications of Trebek's arrest are staggering. Recording police and federal agents in public is a clearly established constitutional right, affirmed by courts across the country. Her detention without charges represents what civil rights attorneys are calling a direct assault on First Amendment protections. More troubling, it's part of a broader pattern of criminalizing resistance to immigration enforcement. Consider the case of Alejandro Orellana, who was federally indicted for handing out face shields to protesters. The 29-year-old faces conspiracy charges for distributing what the indictment describes as protection designed to protect from chemical splashes and flying debris. In other words, providing safety equipment to protesters is now considered a federal crime. The escalation extends beyond individual arrests. Federal prosecutors have begun treating any form of assistance to immigrants or protesters as criminal conspiracy. Judges have been arrested for helping defendants avoid ICE agents. Elected officials face federal charges for warning constituents about raids. Even providing water to migrants crossing the desert has become grounds for prosecution. Ron Gochez, an organizer with Unión del Barrio, doesn't mince words about what his community is experiencing. He describes federal agents as fascist ICE agents, or whoever they are because they're unidentified, violating the rights and breaking the law that they're supposed to protect.
Sorry to be corny. And if you're reading this, you know they touch your heart too, and you're for them. The border appears to be closed. Hypervigilance is no longer in order. It's past time to show a filial connection and appreciation. Stop picking on them. Cease and desist. Get the bad guys, not the good guys. The American people won't support these raids. It's wicked to remove a man or woman from an honest job, and we aren't a wicked people. She was talking about workplace enforcement. I think the enforcement actions at Home Depots comes under the same umbrella. What do you say to that mindset, that argument?
Sure. Michael, I think that, again, that's wishful thinking at its very worst. When we look at some of the heinous criminals that we've apprehended at Home Depots throughout California, I think it becomes evident that we have a problem in this country that stems from that 4+ years, unmitigated migration of illegal aliens across that border. Folks that were unvetted, we don't know who these individuals are, but one thing we do know is that they're walking our streets with impunity. Michael, there was an individual.
The debate has reached the highest levels of media, with conservative commentators defending operations as necessary law enforcement, while critics point to the human cost. When confronted with statistics showing that 46% of ICE detainees have no criminal record, defenders pivot to anecdotal cases of serious criminals being apprehended, though these represent a small minority of total arrests. The reference to unidentified agents isn't hyperbole. Many federal operations now involve masked officers who refuse to show badges or provide names when confronted by community members or legal observers. The psychological impact on immigrant communities cannot be overstated. In neighborhoods across Los Angeles, Boston, Chicago, and other major cities, daily life has ground to a halt. Parents keep children home from school. Workers avoid their jobs. Families cancel medical appointments. Entire commercial districts that were once bustling with activity have become ghost towns as residents fear leaving their homes. Dr. Sarang Sekavat from the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition describes the transformation. We're seeing people not going to their doctor's appointments, kid, not going to school, folks not going grocery shopping. You're seeing a lot of businesses in some of these neighborhoods really suffering because people just don't want to leave home. Bustling, active neighborhoods that have become very quiet now. This fear isn't unfounded. Federal agents have demonstrated a willingness to arrest anyone who happens to be in their vicinity. U.S. citizens like Arturo Hermosillo, a 36-year-old electrician, was detained simply for witnessing a federal operation. Hermosillo was driving his company van when he saw masked agents surrounding individuals on the ground near a shopping center.
As bystanders ask questions and voice their views.
You just split up a family.
This was the night of July 31st in Ambridge, a borough represented by Democratic U.S. Congressman Chris Deluzio. He says he and his office have posed basic questions to ICE for weeks regarding this and other operations in the region and have yet to receive any answers.
Traditionally, when a member of Congress asks a federal law enforcement agency for basic information, we expect an answer, and that's what should be happening here.
So on Tuesday, he escalated his inquiries with a letter to ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons. He opened it saying, quote, "Your agency's Office of Congressional Relations provided a pathetic, inadequate, and unacceptable response to my office's inquiries about recent ICE activity in Ambridge. This will not fly with me." He says ICE responded by saying, quote, "We're not tracking any information specific to non-routine."
His decision to observe the scene resulted in his arrest, despite his citizenship and complete lack of criminal history. The confrontation between officers and community members questioning their actions has become increasingly common, with bystanders demanding to know why people are being detained without apparent cause. The community response has been remarkable in both its scope and determination. Grassroots organizations have created sophisticated networks to monitor federal activities and protect vulnerable residents.
Came to this Home Depot in Pasadena, where we met school librarian Sharon Nichols and her neighbors.
I'm not an activist. We're all just regular people.
They've made their local Home Depot a top priority. It's called Adopt a Corner. They're here every morning providing day laborers with information and watching out for ICE agents.
We have vulnerable people standing out here, and we need to protect everybody in our community.
So you're in it for the long haul?
Yeah, absolutely.
Home Depots have become a hotbed for immigration raids, so residents have vowed to remain a constant presence at dozens of locations across LA County, as the protests move from large gatherings downtown to smaller rallies in the suburbs.
Okay, we can do a little line through the inside.
We're not expecting this to happen. So
Local residents, including teachers, librarians, and retirees, have organized Adopt a Corner movements, monitoring locations like Home Depot parking lots where day laborers gather. They distribute information about legal rights, document any ICE activity, and alert the community through rapid response networks. These ordinary citizens have become the front line of resistance, transforming from bystanders into activists overnight. They use encrypted communications, coordinate legal observers, and maintain rapid response teams that can mobilize within minutes of reported raids. These efforts have led to dramatic confrontations. In San Diego, protesters surrounded federal vehicles during a restaurant raid, leading agents to deploy flashbangs and smoke devices. In Los Angeles, community members have thrown themselves between agents and their targets, resulting in what authorities describe as a 500% increase in assaults on ICE officers. Though activists argue they're simply using their bodies to protect neighbors from what they see as illegal arrests, the legal challenges are mounting as well. A class action lawsuit filed in California's Central District challenges the legality of warrantless arrests throughout Southern California. The complaint describes current enforcement operations as looking less like lawful arrests and more like brazen midday kidnappings. Similar lawsuits have achieved injunctions in other regions, forcing federal agents to modify their tactics. But the resistance comes at a cost. Federal prosecutors have made it clear that anyone interfering with immigration enforcement will face the full weight of the criminal justice system. The charges being filed aren't minor infractions, they're federal felonies carrying years in prison. The message is unmistakable. Resistance will be crushed. This creates a chilling effect that extends far beyond immigration enforcement. When recording government actions becomes grounds for arrest, when providing safety equipment to protesters results in federal charges, when simply observing law enforcement leads to detention, the implications reach every corner of American society. The broader context reveals how these tactics fit into a systematic approach to governance through fear. By targeting not just immigrants, but anyone who documents, protests, or assists them, federal authorities are creating a zone of impunity around their operations. The goal isn't just deportation, it's the elimination of oversight, accountability, and resistance. Amanda Trebach's release after intense community pressure demonstrates that resistance can work. Her arrest sparked immediate mobilization, with hundreds of supporters demanding her freedom. The combination of legal pressure, media attention, and community organizing forced federal authorities to release her without charges, a rare victory in an environment where such releases are increasingly uncommon. But her case also reveals the precarious nature of constitutional rights when faced with determined government overreach. Trebach was fortunate to have strong community support and legal representation. Many others swept up in federal operations lack such resources and disappear into a detention system where access to attorneys is limited and due process rights are routinely violated. In C, immunities where federal enforcement is concentrated, the tactics often target areas with significant immigrant populations, creating what critics describe as collective punishment. Entire neighborhoods face heightened scrutiny not because of individual criminal activity, but because of their demographic composition. The international implications are also significant. When the United States employs tactics that would be condemned in other countries, masked agents conducting warrantless arrests, criminalizing documentation of government activities, using military-style force against civilians, it undermines American credibility in promoting human rights globally. Looking ahead, the trajectory seems clear. Federal authorities are systematically expanding the definition of criminal behavior to include any form of resistance to immigration enforcement. Community organizing, legal observation, protest activities, and even basic humanitarian assistance are being redefined as federal crimes. The response from affected communities has been to double down on resistance efforts. Organizations like Unión del Barrio are expanding their monitoring networks, training more legal observers, and building broader coalitions with civil rights groups, religious organizations, and labor unions. They understand that this isn't just about immigration, it's about fundamental democratic principles. The legal battles will continue in federal courts across the country. Constitutional attorneys are preparing challenges not just to specific arrests, but to the entire framework of current enforcement. They argue that the tactics being employed violate multiple constitutional amendments and federal statutes governing law enforcement conduct. Amanda Trebach's story represents more than one nurse's encounter with federal overreach. It's a preview of what happens when government power operates without meaningful constraints. Her arrest for recording public officials, her detention without charges, and her release only after community pressure reveals both the extent of current government overreach and the potential for organized resistance to push back. The broader implications extend far beyond immigration enforcement. When federal agents can arrest citizens for documenting their activities, when providing safety equipment becomes a federal crime, when community organizing is treated as criminal conspiracy, the foundations of democratic accountability crumble. Yet the response from communities like those served by Unión del Barrio shows that resistance remains possible. Through documentation, legal challenges, community organizing, and mutual aid, ordinary citizens are asserting their rights against extraordinary government power. Amanda Trebach's freedom came not from government benevolence, but from community pressure, a reminder that rights exist only when people are willing to fight for them. As this administration continues to expand enforcement operations, the question isn't whether communities will continue to resist. They will. The question is whether American institutions will uphold constitutional principles or allow fear and authoritarianism to reshape the country's fundamental character. Amanda Trebach's arrest was just the beginning. How Americans respond will determine what comes next.